Okay, well, welcome everyone to our monthly webinar. This month we're talking about, we called it the shifting landscape and understanding the rise in pharmacy mergers and acquisitions. But really what stemmed this webinar is we have seen a pretty significant increase in the amount of uh, buy and sell activity within the pharmacy space, in particular since probably November, December of last year. It's increased dramatically over the previous compared to the previous few years. So we just want to talk through some of the things we think are causing that. This is a monthly webinar. We do record these and we send them out afterwards. There is a Q&A at the bottom of your screen. If you have questions, feel free to drop a question in the Q&A. We will try to answer them as we go or at the end. If you don't know, I'm Owen Bondurant. I am a partner at Independent RX. Independent RX is a accounting and consulting firm. We help people start and buy pharmacies. We help people sell pharmacies, and we provide a full accounting service for independent pharmacies all over the country. This is my business partner, Tim. We are partners in Independent RX, but we also own a couple of pharmacies, and I'll let Tim introduce himself and his background.
Hello, thanks for joining us today, and hope you filled out your pool correctly so you win lots of money. Um, Basically, I'm a pharmacist, third generation pharmacist. I kind of took over from my father and grandfather. I had the pleasure of being a partner for about 30 years with Owen's dad, Mark Bondurant. And Owen and I, for the last 10 years, have been working together, I think, and well, really more for starting this consulting practice where really started with doing what we were really good at, which was buying and starting stores, and it just kind of exploded, through a lot of the vision that Owen had of trying to help, pharmacy owners. So, I've kind of, pulled myself along with Owen to try to, give my insights to owners to help them make good business decisions, but also with a little bit of clarity and empathy of understanding what we're going through when we own a business. So appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to us give our opinions. And again, frankly, that's what we're giving you. We're giving our opinions, and hopefully those can help you.
Yeah. Well, so thanks everyone for being here. As I said at the beginning of the webinar, we have seen a pretty large increase in the number of people who are selling and also the number of buyers in the market compared to really since pre-COVID, to be honest with you. And the number had just gone up so much that we wanted to talk through why we think that is and some things that we're seeing. So I guess, Tim, what are you seeing? I mean, you're dealing with a lot of sellers, so what what why do you think people are now looking to sell versus previous? What are you seeing?
Well. First off, I mean, if you're still operating a pharmacy, you've withstood, basically a hurricane over the last 5 years, whether it was through our COVID. I guess it was an opportunity for us to change the DIR, which was the ability for us to learn about cash flow management. And if you survived, those things, you probably, have done reasonably well. However, what you've seen is your margins decline, and you've had to change how you run your business. You've had to adapt, and some of us, depending upon where we are in the business life cycle, have now, feel okay that now it's an okay time for me to sell. But And again, this is my opinion. I think there are now more buyers out there than sellers. I mean, and the reason, in my opinion, is pretty simple. Valuations are still kind of low because um, our margins are lower. Our cash flow that we're generating is lower, which means that we can't satisfy, these big notes unless we, you know, when someone's getting a loan, it's all based upon cash flow. And if we've lost cash flow and we can't show that to a bank, banks only make reasonable loans. Um, they're not an offsite, venture lender. I mean, they're really just it's you could put an abacus out there to figure out how they're going to say yes or no to you, because I can tell you that probably 99 times out of 100 we can guess if they're going to okay it or not, because we can figure out the cash flow. So right now it's a good opportunity if you're looking at checking it out. There's definitely buyers, and it's kind of like a real estate market. If there's buyers, then I would tell you you've got to at least think about it, because last year there were no buyers. I mean, that's what I saw. There was transactions, because there's always transactions, just like the housing market. People always have to move. People always have to sell. But and I think, Owen and I was talking at the beginning of this year. It was like the light switch went on, and now there's like all these people, you know, talking about expanding their business, and typically most of them are, I would say, really successful pharmacy owners that are
Yeah.
looking at expanding, and they've figured it out.
And you said something at the beginning of there that, COVID was an opportunity and then we had DIR fees. And I think that is driving some of the change here is a lot of owners took advantage of COVID, but when they did that, I mean, between the shots and some of the compounds and the testing, I mean, it was everything you could do just to get through the day. And a lot of people had their staff working overtime, and I mean, it was a lot, and it kind of went on for a long time. In addition, you had your front ends closed and we're doing everything out of the drive-through. So, like, most people weren't going, yeah, I'm going to sell my business right now. And then they came out of that, and then immediately it was like, oh, we have a DIR fee cliff. So then it was like, well, what's my business worth? I did $1 million of COVID stuff. That's going away. So they can't really count that in my valuation. Now I've got double DIR fees. So now what am I worth? And so it's like, oh my gosh, like, so unless you really had to sell, like you weren't really getting out there. And now we're kind of through that. So I think people are going, okay, I made it through that. Everything was fine. I still have a good business. Maybe it's time um, to be done. And so I've seen some of that. The other thing I've kind of seen is, and someone put in here, who is buying? Is it the chains buying independents or independents buying independents? And I would tell you, um, the chains had kind of stopped buying as well, right, Tim? I mean, they were dealing with the COVID stuff. They were dealing with the changing reimbursements. They're closing stores, but we're seeing the chains kind of come back around, and though they're not paying what they once did, they are interested in buying more so than they had been even probably 6 months ago. Um, but for the most part, I would say it's other independents buying independents, it's pharmacists buying independents, and there is a, a decent amount of, I'll call them investors. I don't even know what you would call this. It's not really private equity, but it's like, you know, business investors who, want to own healthcare businesses, and one of which is pharmacy. So we're seeing a little bit of every type of buyer. Um, and again, those buyers now know what they're getting because, I feel like the reimbursements have stabilized for the most part. There's no more DIR fees. There's not a big COVID increase in business. There's not, like, they know what they're getting, and so they're more confident to move forward. Um,
Yeah,
and
I think that's true, Owen. I mean, there's a lot more confidence. There's a lot more people who um, who kind of already have their business plan together of what they need and what they're looking for. It could be that they're, multi-store owner trying to expand and just add your store to their their formats. They've got a little bit of an advantage in terms of purchasing. They've got a staffing advantage that we typically don't have when we own, one store. Um, then you've got people that a lot of people I talk to, like for especially in the compounding space and the long-term care space, there's I call them strategic buyers is usually how I explain them to my sellers. But basically people who have, typically cash in hand. Um, some of them may need financing, but most of them have cash in hand and they're trying to they're buying scripts, they're buying a new location. They're trying to expand into, let's say if you're in Ohio and let's say you're in Cincinnati, they want to open up a place in Cleveland. I mean, they're trying to make, you know, now where I thought before things would just seem like we are all frozen. It's like when you wait for political seasons to change. Everybody's kind of just frozen in terms of making decisions. But now there's people who have kind of sunk in and say, "Hey, I'm going to be this." They're investing the money and the time to go look at this, and which is again, it's a good thing for us as pharmacists.
and one thing I forgot to mention with the COVID and DIR fees, we also went through a pretty uh, large inflation period. So on top of all that, our costs all went up. What it costs to lend money went way up. So that was also happening during those 5 years, which, makes buyers nervous. Um, and so that is also, I mean, inflation slowed, interest rates have actually come down, and I would think over the next few years they'll probably continue to come down some. They're at least at more reasonable amounts right now compared to what they were. Um, and then I guess the other thing we're seeing, and I mean, Tim, you and I, we've made some technology changes and just changes in general across the board in our pharmacies actually fairly recently, and technology is between automation and digital health and um, texting and pharmacy system changes and I mean there's all this technology and also clinical changes occurring in the space and you know though that's a huge opportunity if you don't want to take the I mean it's a big change some of this stuff and for a lot of people I think they're going well I know I need to change use more technology do more clinical stuff but you know you're totally doing changing what you've done the last 15 years. I mean, you have thoughts on that, Tim?
Well, as we try to make those clinical changes or get into you know t- on-site at-home testing or adding a clinic with some of these vendors at your pharmacy. I mean, they all require us to invest some time. I mean, so depending upon how you look at it, if you're on the bench and you're filling 200 prescriptions a day, you probably got no time to go add new services, is my guess. You've got to deploy someone who's going to go do that and it be their, you know, kind of their project. Adding a service is a project, and I think Owen, you're a much better planner than me. You would tell me to create a project plan. If I want to if I want to add this clinical service, you would be very, as a partner, you would say, Tim, that's a great idea, but what is our plan and how and what resources are we're going to have to get, and we're going to have to look at what is our ROI, all these things that, typically us pharmacists just I think I should do this because I saw Bob down the street or over in Pennsylvania do that. And he seemed like he was really good when I saw him at the conference, but I haven't really done the simple math. And really that's really all it requires is you have to sit there and try to make, again, you are guessing. I mean, it's like a projection, you're guessing. Okay, and I would suggest, like we always do, you suggest high and low. Oh, if I only got 10 patients or if I got 30 patients, whatever that is, we kind of get something reasonable. So we can at least know that either we're going to be underwater with, let's say, Mary doing the project, or what's the investment? We've got to figure out what the investment to go do that. And the investment may be that we've got to buy, you know, a couple new iPads. We've got to, maybe our patient education room or our counseling room or immunization room it's tired.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to finally get that chair that's got the rip on there, or it's gross. Ask a friend if it's gross. If you don't know if it's gross, look at the things around there and see what the changes you have to make to do that. And very simply, I guess talk about that, Owen, I mean, you're really good at formulating a good business case, right? And that's what you're doing on all these things of helping you make those decisions, right?
Yeah, well, and I think that's exactly right. I think people have come out of the double DIR fee, the COVID stuff, and they've gone, all right, now I need to adapt my business to the new market of clinical services, technology, all this other stuff that's out there. And they may not be, like you said, I would go, okay, here's my total cost, and it's going to be $52,000 and 10 cents or whatever I would do. Um, but I think,
And your dad would do the same thing.
yeah, yeah, and I think sellers though are going, hey, I'm gonna have to put some money into this, and I'm going to have to put my time, and I'm going to have to learn something new and all these things. And they're going, maybe I'll let the young person who wants to buy the store do that, which is a perfectly reasonable thing. And you're like, okay, well, I know there's a market to sell, there's buyers. Why don't I sell and let these new buyers come in and make some of these changes? Because I mean, Tim, we put in text messaging at our stores, and I mean, it seems like a simple thing, right? Like, oh, and it was fairly simple actually, but like, you know, you have to communicate it to the patients. You have to come up with a communication plan. You have to teach your employees how to use it and when not to use it. And you have to, integrate it with your system, and you have to do training calls. And, there was a cost to it too. It's not free. So, like, even something as simple as that requires work. But the reality is like, if you're not doing text messaging to your patients, like everyone else, all your competitors are. It's not like one of those things where you can just sit back and be like, you know, I'll not do it. So it's those kinds of decisions that I think people were distracted by all the other stuff going on, and now they're coming up and going, hmm, there's buyers. Like, we know what the valuations are. I need to make all these other changes. Maybe it's time to, you know,
Well, you
retire.
you 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 kind of make me think of something, Owen, in terms of, like, the decision that I've got to make, it like, when do I want to sell?
Hmm.
And I'm going to give us two things to think about. One is, can I sell it and get enough money that I think that that's what I deserve or that I need? Sometimes what I deserve and what I need are two different things.
Yep.
The other thing is, and I say this to a lot of people who are, uh, you know, buyers or sellers. You're in business, and what I tell you, if you're in business, you are at a poker table. You are literally at a poker table, and I think you remember my dad. My dad was a great businessman, but he loved to play poker,
He was pretty
cards,
good at poker
gamble,
too.
and golf. He was a gambler. He was a risk taker. All those things. You may not be a gambler, but if you own your own business, I'm sorry, you are a gambler. You are, and not everybody is, and that's okay. But you also, when you are a gambler and you're a risk taker, you have to think about, and this is typically where I say, I'll call my friend, Steve Kimple, who was a, an investment banker. I'll call, or Dave Mellon, who was a, who works at another bank. I'll call my friends who are not in my business, because what I'm trying to find out is this reasonable, and should I do this based upon me sitting at the poker table? Because your buddies, your friends that you trust, and even people who are that you pay, like your accountants, your attorneys, they want you to be okay. They literally do. I mean, they have no beef with you. Like they literally want you to be okay. So you have to go to those people and go through these decisions to figure, where am I at the poker table? And when you figure out if I'm a buyer or I'm a bettor or if I'm a seller, that is your decision.
Yeah.
And if you're a seller, I'll give you much caution, because if you're a seller and you're sitting there with your chips out, that's a terrible place to be, because someone will steal your freaking chips.
Yep. Agreed.
And it's not purposeful. I mean, like, I'm not literally saying that your employees are going to steal from you or whatever, but you're not going to be like looking at your business and running it correctly. So if you think it's time to go out, but you don't have enough money, to get out, these are things, again, you talk to your either your investment people, your buddies who you think are smarter than people who want the best for you. I think, like, for us, obviously we're in the consulting business. Like, I think it's great. I get to, when I put my hat on to talk to somebody, I just want you to be okay.
Yep.
But you are the only one who sits at that poker table. I'm not invested in your business, so you have to decide where I am in terms of being a risk taker.
Yeah.
I don't
And
know if that was helpful or not, but that's kind of how I think,
one like
that really, I think, should help you decide where you are in terms of, operating, buying and selling. If you're going to operate, we can get lazy and do some stuff, or that's just normal, but you can't do it for too long. I mean, because if you do it for too long, like it's like a house of cards, like something always goes wrong. Like, we bought too much inventory, or someone forgot to do this or that, and we didn't renew something. I mean, it's like silly mistakes because we're not engaged.
yep. And some of that comes down to what, and you've mentioned a couple times, like the valuation and how much money you get. And I think that's also something driving this is, though valuations aren't as high as they were 10 years ago, um, we at least know what the valuations are. I mean, over the last 5 years, they were all over the place, and sometimes there was buyers and sometimes there weren't buyers, and this valuation would be this, and it was like pretty unpredictable. I mean, people would ask me, what per script do people pay? And I'd be like, well, sometimes 0 and sometimes 15. I don't know. And now it's more stabilized, so you at least can figure out eh, what it is that people are going to pay. And in addition to that, we are getting, and you mentioned earlier, there's investors and so forth that are buying, and they're looking at your top line revenue. They're not even always looking at your EBITDA. They're wanting the location because they can add on business, or they need it to fulfill business they already have, or and so gaining your revenue plus what they have is worth a lot of money to them. It's not in every scenario, but we are seeing more of that, where I think there's current owners, whether they be independents or kind of larger groups, that now feel like the market's stabilized and they're willing to go out and expand. and they need your business to go do that. Um, so there's just some market factors there that I think allow you to potentially get what you want, but also the sellers are getting what they need in order to expand properly. Where we have not had that in the past few years at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And from a banking perspective, I hear from sellers a lot like, who's financing these things? I can't believe there's any bank that would want to finance a pharmacy. Well, I can tell you there's a lot of them. There's, 6, 7 pharmacy specific banks. We see in local banks do this. I mean, there is a lot, and the SBA, the Small Business Administration, has also made it with the rising interest rates. They made some changes to allow these transactions to be to occur easier. Um, they've done things around the cash injection and making that easier for people. They've gotten rid of a lot of their fees up to a certain dollar amount to lower your overall cost to buy a business. And so they've changed some of their requirements to make it more appealing for someone to go out and get a loan. So that also is causing buyers to get in because they have access to capital. And in the end, I mean, you got to get your money, right? Going back to, the seller needing their number. Well, they're maybe you do some of a promissory note, but you probably want a little bit up front in order to feel comfortable upon closing.
Hey, Ellen, I just got an email from one of my clients who is considering selling, and and her comment was that they just went to a wholesaler meeting, and remember that went to a wholesaler meeting, and they talked about retirement planning and your exit strategy, and they said at that meeting that this is a terrible time to sell a pharmacy
Interesting.
because we're at rock bottom. Best you can get is $5 a prescription. So let's just see what happens with this Walgreens thing to see what we're going to do.
Interesting.
Let me answer that right here. You went to a wholesale meeting. Let me tell you about your wholesaler who who serves a purpose of delivering us drugs. They do. And we need them timely so we can keep our cash flow going. But your wholesaler does not want you to ever sell. They want to be in control of your exit strategy because they need to keep that business. Your business is the most profitable business that they have. Go read a report, that they give to their shareholders. You and I pay more for these medications than anybody else. You and I are the only segment that waits to get 45% of our generic costs back to us in over 60 days. If you're considering selling your business, yes, go for them and get as much free advice you can, but goodness gracious, you've got to look at who you're talking to, people. Yes, it is true that you may get an offer for $5 a script. And here's what I would tell you: if you get an offer for $5 a script, you've got a bad mix of business. And that chain does not need it. Or your cash flow, your expenses are too high, your rent's too high, you're probably operating inefficiently.
Yep.
But I absolutely, totally disagree with what they were saying at that meeting, and I wish I was invited. Because the best thing your wholesaler can do is treat me like you do a big client. Give me 30-day terms and charge me what's a fair price for my generics today. and stop making me hit compliance ratios, because what are you doing? You're using me to make profits, and this is I can't solve anything myself, but goodness gracious, if you got a question about this stuff, you can book a call for me and it's free. 30 minutes, 20 minutes free. I mean, I will give you my opinion.
Oh,
It
and
may not be right, but I got nothing to really gain from you. We don't make a lot of money when we sell your pharmacy. I'm probably the most inexpensive person that'll sell your business. And the only reason I really do it is because I hate the whole transaction thing, because someone has got to protect me.
yeah, and I mean, valuations are lower, but I mean, if you have a good business, you have the ability to get out. And I would tell you, if you have a good business and you get a bad offer, well, then don't sell. Wait. But there is the ability to sell, and uh, we're not totally seeing that. I mean, we're not seeing valuations from 2012 where people were getting $20 a script, but we are seeing value like reasonable dollar amounts. Most of the time, there are exceptions to that. But
Right. And again, we'll tell you, you're going to get paid if you've got good business. That's again, it's not rocket science. If you've got compounding and you're making, $60 a script, I mean, you're going to get paid more than me, who's making $7 filling a Caremark script, or $5 filling a Caremark script. If I got a bunch of those, I'm not worth that much money. If I've got long-term care business, or I'm a combo shop, I'm worth more money because I do this. Um, if I got lots of deliveries, I'm sorry, I'm not worth that. I'm not worth that much, because that's a hard business to keep. Now I will say, like, Walgreens is paying for delivery business now.
Mhm.
I mean, they're I'm not. I almost want to use the word desperate, but they're aggressive. Well, we'll see what happens as they transition into a privatized company, but um, like I said, it's sitting at the poker table. That's really how you make decisions. It's at a poker table. You get as much information as you can about your business, and a lot of it starts with who I am. Am I ready to? Am I really ready? And if I'm not, that's also okay. Like, you know, that's part of the exercise. We've got people who come to us that think they want to sell and then they don't want to sell, and that's just part of the thing. It's emotional.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, and speaking of that, emotions and trying to think through this, this is a fantastic question. So we got a question here and it says, so we have three pharmacies, a retail, a long-term care, and a compounding.
Nice.
We have been told that it will take a sophisticated buyer as the valuation is over 5 million. Should we consider selling them separately? Uh,
I mean, it's there's not a wrong answer there. You should
there
look
is
at doing
not.
both. You should look at doing both.
Because I would
You
tell
know,
you that there are sophisticated buyers who can buy that and who will pay for a profitable business.
yep.
But on the flip side, you also may get that same dollar amount by selling them separately to three different groups who are looking for three different things. So if I were you, I would be open to again, this is part of the process is that you, you've got to gather the information on your business, put it out there so people know what they're looking at, and then there'll be offers that come in and you have to go, okay, yeah, well, we've got an offer for each one of these. We've got a really good offer for one. Maybe we'll sell that off. What does this mean? Um, you may get offers for all three and someone wants it. I mean, the good news is you have all three, which is, uh, I mean, the ideal situation.
Right. And the complexity of it is like in your head, if you feel like they're all um, important to each other, like as a group, like in my business, okay, we're Clarks, okay, we do compounding long-term care, and I would tell you simply that they there's not really cross.
Yeah,
There's
they're
really
fairly
not.
separate. Yeah.
Now, when you have retail and compounding can cross. I mean, because it's a walk-in sort of thing. Um, so it really depends on like looking at the businesses and trying to, you know, I would have to look at the business to give you some advice, but the simplest thing is just try to get the most money you can.
Yep.
I
And
mean,
I also think there's more sophisticated buyers than you think out there. Um, but it could be that you want to hang on to one and sell two. Um, and that's an option as well. You know, I think we all get barriers in our head, like what if this, what if this, what is this? And there's usually a solution to those. Now, whether or not that solution meets what you're looking to do is a whole nother topic, but um, I hope that answers your question. And that's a great question because we actually get that question quite often. Like, should I sell these separately? Should I sell one to a pharmacist that works for me and sell the other two? We see that a lot. And I would tell you, well, let's explore it and see if that makes sense for all parties. Um, so, and do the numbers. Like Tim says, I love to do the numbers. Okay, what does that leave me with? What are my options there? How does it impact me? I mean, you can't predict everything, but you can get enough information to make good educated decisions. Uh, so, okay. Anything parting words, Tim? I got to get
no,
back to watching basketball.
yeah. Good luck to your to your team. Of course, the teams I follow, Cincinnati Bearcats and University of Dayton are in those side tournaments, but whatever. It's just not our year. One day we'll get back into a dance, but you know, good luck. It still amazes me that we live close to Ohio State, and Ohio State can't even get into the dance. How much money do they really need an NIL to staff a basketball team? I mean, goodness gracious. Do we have to use all of it on our football team? So that's my parting shot.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us again. We will um, send an email out, post this to our social and our website if you missed anything. And of course, you can come to our website, and at the top, you can schedule a discussion with myself or Tim at any time. Um, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one, which will be in April. We're going to go through our data dashboard and how we integrate with Pioneer to display data to you if you're a current operator. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.